Picture this. The President of the United States steps onto an escalator at the United Nations, and it suddenly stops. The First Lady forced to climb stairs in heels while cameras roll. Minutes later, Trump approaches the podium, and the teleprompter mysteriously fails. Coincidence? Well, the White House doesn't think so. Press Secretary Karoline Leavitt is demanding answers and calling for heads to roll. President Trump just dropping a scathing message on Truth Social. The UN claims it was a safety mechanism triggered by a cameraman walking backward. But here's the thing. The Times reported days earlier that UN staffers joked about shutting off the escalators when Trump arrived. A prank? Sabotage? A message? Whatever it was, the optics are devastating. America's president literally stopped in his tracks on the world stage. The truth will shock you. But you know what? President Trump doesn't need an escalator. He can actually climb stairs. Now, when world leaders try to humiliate America's president, it's a reminder that we can't rely on global institutions. That's why smart Americans are securing their future with My Patriot Supply. Their 3-month emergency food kit isn't just about natural disasters. It's about being ready when diplomatic relations collapse and supply chains break. You get over 2,000 calories daily for 90 days, real meals, breakfast, lunch, dinner, drinks, snacks, all in sturdy buckets that last 25 years, made in America, no MSG, no garbage. Right now, save $100 while supplies last. When the UN plays games with our president, when global elites mock our nation, preparation isn't paranoia, it's patriotism. Fast shipping, 30-day returns, disaster replacement guarantee. Visit preparewithgary.com. That's preparewithgary.com. It's linked down below. Don't wait. Now, this is turning out to be a lot bigger than I thought. When I initially watched the footage of President Trump going to the escalator, here's the moment.
Going to Bush Zelensky for peace, President Trump.
I mean, this is actually pretty scary because I'm like, this now he's a sitting duck, right? He could have been attacked. He could have been shot, anything. There could have been a real nasty happening here. But he worked through it and walked up the escalator. This is just an effort to humiliate the President of the United States.
You're going to Bush Zelensky for peace, President.
And then, of course, this
Very
moment.
much appreciated. And I don't mind making this speech without a teleprompter because the teleprompter is not working.
So these are now, we're learning, I mean, triple sabotage at the UN. During his UN General Assembly visit, President Donald Trump faced 3 mishaps. An escalator suddenly stopped while he and Melania were on it. A teleprompter glitch forced him to read printed notes for 15 minutes. Audio problems in the hall. The UN response, spokesperson Stephanie Dujarric said a member of Trump's own delegation or videographer may have accidentally triggered the escalator's safety stop. That's impossible. You know, you guys have seen those safety stops. I thought about this too. They're usually like the top or the bottom of the escalator. You actually have to lift up a spring, a hinged spring cover, pull it up, and press the button. That's the safety mechanism. So it's not accidentally just going to get triggered by somebody walking backward. They say a White House staffer operating the teleprompter was responsible for the glitch, meaning the issues were not caused by the UN staff. Times of London report that Trump and others cited a report that some UN staffers joked about shutting off the escalator to make him walk up the steps. And we have this is what President Trump just wrote on Truth Social. President Trump slamming the United Nations for their sinister events. He called them sinister events, including the escalator, teleprompter, and mic volume. This was absolute sabotage. The people who did it should be arrested. That's what Trump said. The Secret Service is involved. Look at this missive he posted to Truth Social. Holy cow. All right, we're gonna read this. This is President Trump. He says, a real disgrace took place at the United Nations yesterday. Not one, not two, but 3 very sinister events. First, the escalator going up to the main speaking floor came to a screeching halt. It stopped on a dime. It's amazing that Melania and I didn't fall forward onto the sharp edges of these steel steps face first. It was only that we were each holding the handrail tightly, or it would have been a disaster. This was absolutely sabotage, as noted by days earlier posts in the London Times that said UN workers joked about turning off an escalator. The people that did it should be arrested. Then, as I stood before the television crowd of millions of people all over the world and important leaders in the hall, my teleprompter didn't work. It was stone cold dark. I immediately thought to myself, wow, first the escalator event and now a bad teleprompter. What kind of place is this? I then proceeded to make a speech without the teleprompter, which kicked in about 15 minutes later. The good news is the speech has gotten fantastic reviews. He loves his reviews. Maybe they appreciated the fact that very few people could have done what I did. And third, after making the speech, I was told the sound was completely off in the auditorium where the speech was made, that world leaders, unless they used the interpreter's earpieces, couldn't hear a thing. The first person I saw at the conclusion of the speech was Melania, who was sitting right up front. I said, how'd I do? And she said, I couldn't hear a word you said. This wasn't a coincidence. This was a triple sabotage at the UN. They ought to be ashamed of themselves. I'm sending a copy of this letter to the Secretary General and I demand an immediate investigation. No wonder the United Nations hasn't been able to do the job they were put in existence to do. All security tapes at the escalators should be saved, especially the emergency stop button. The Secret Service is involved. Thank you for your attention to this matter. And here is the Times of London. Karoline Leavitt posting this. If someone at the UN intentionally stopped the escalator as the President and First Lady were stepping on, they need to be fired and investigated immediately. The Times reported this on Sunday. To mark Trump's arrival, UN staff members have joked that they may turn off the escalators and elevators and simply tell them they ran out of money, so he has to walk up the stairs. Coincidence? I think not. Somebody was talking. Poetic justice. Someone thought it would be funny to break the escalator as soon as Trump stepped on it. Presumably the same people broke his teleprompter as he began a 15-minute speech. Due to the malfunction, Trump extended the speech an additional 40 minutes. Wow. Now, we got some commentaries here. Stephen Crowder writing, how can you not love this man? Here's a snippet from his speech.
I ended 7 wars, dealt with the leaders of each and every one of these countries, and never even received a phone call from the United Nations offering to help in finalizing the deal. All I got from the United Nations was an escalator that on the way up stopped right in the middle. If the First Lady wasn't in great shape, she would have fallen, but she's in great shape. We're both in good shape. We both stood. And then a teleprompter that didn't work. These are the 2 things I got from the United Nations, a bad escalator and a bad teleprompter. Thank you very much. I ended
He ends 7 wars, and this is what they do for him. Let's see. We've got, let's check in with Real America's Voice. They're talking about it, too.
Walked back down. Joe Biden would have never made it up that escalator.
Exactly.
I think that's important to point out. What would that have looked like? I keep trying to imagine. Would he have walked back down the escalator? Would he have just stopped and waited for someone to carry him off? Would he have tried to make it up and stopped a bunch of times? What's your over-under on all that?
The over-under is he would have looked for an elevator to go up. There's no way he would have walked up those stairs, and I don't think it's any coincidence that the escalator and the teleprompter went out. And we were talking offline before the show. This could have turned out to be a very dangerous situation. If you've ever been on an escalator and it stopped, or even going down or up, you lose your balance. All it takes is one person to fall back, and then everyone behind them is going down as well. So whatever prank that someone at the UN decided to pull, I think that should be investigated, because that could have been a very dangerous situation.
And the investigation is happening. President Trump calling for it. Jesse Waters weighing in too. He says, let's see what he says.
Yeah. And worry, what's going on with the escalator? What do you think?
Yeah, they sabotaged them.
Yeah.
And they could have hurt the first lady.
Yeah.
Trump would have fallen and he would have gotten back up. But, you know,
they would have blamed it on his rhetoric.
And then they sabotaged the teleprompter.
Yeah.
I mean, this is an insurrection.
Worry. What?
This is an insurrection. Escalator broke the second he stepped on it. What's this guy saying? Petty tyrants. Walter Kurt. These aren't strong men. They're insects in crowns. The same breed as Caligula making senators bow to his horse. Petty tyrants, weak men with scraps of power playing games to feel important.
Already seen a couple stories saying that you and staff petty tyrants. That's what we're dealing with today. It was ridiculous to watch. President Trump, the moment he walked into the United Nations and his shoes hit the ground there, the staff there, of course, decided to try and taunt him and mock him. The escalator stopped the second that he stepped on it. I've already seen a couple stories saying that you and staffers were joking about this beforehand. It's like they're like kids. They're like middle schoolers, trying to pull a fire alarm in the middle of school or something. It's ridiculous, really. And then his teleprompter goes out right as he takes the podium and he's forced to address it the moment he gets up there. This stuff, it was obviously intentional. Like, come on. This is all intentional. All the other escalators are working. There's no way that the teleprompter just worked out. It was just petty. These are small acts of small men pretending that they're something else. They think that they're clever. They think that this little act of defiance, it really is like a teenager lashing out his dad. I think somebody I've heard say that, leftism is essentially screw you, dad, is really the end of it. But that's what they're just petulant kids. They think that their little power game, their little tiny things like that. And despite that, President Trump still delivered. Without the crutch of his teleprompter, without any of that, he still gave one of his most powerful and pointed speeches that he has to date. So despite their stupid little games, it didn't work. Because it's what happens when you try and humiliate someone like President Trump. All you do is piss him off. And that's all you did. The term petty tyrant didn't start today. It's a very old term. It comes from old philosophers, the Greeks and Romans, who mocked the weak men that grabbed at scraps of power just to try and bully others. You could see them everywhere in history. Caligula, when he put his horse in the Senate just to try and mock them. He's trying to get them to grovel at his feet as he puts his horse in the Senate. Robespierre, who sent thousands to the guillotine in the name of virtue. Petty people that are small minds do small things. That's what really happens when you can't think about big things. You can't think about big ideas. You try to humiliate people. The Soviets were the same sort of way. They would mock people with bread lines, even if they had the food. They just wanted to make people feel hungry. They're not giants. No, they're really just insects in crowns. I think that's the
Well said. Well said. I think we have a longer segment here. This is Jesse Waters, White House demanding an investigation into escalator gate. Trump wants to know who stopped his escalator at the UN, almost hurt the First Lady. This is what we're paying billions of dollars for. He goes on to write that the United Nations is a slush fund for lazy diplomats. They haven't stopped any wars. They've been funding invasions and telling us the world is going to end. Trump has a message for the world. Follow the MAGA model or your country is going to hell.
Just lucky that Daddy's not happy. He came to the UN today and it was a total mess. Everything was broken. The escalators weren't even working. Trump and Melania were riding it up and it just stopped. The First Lady lost her balance a bit, but steadied herself, thankfully, and then marched to the top. She could have been hurt. And the president looked over at the press and knew something was up. At first, we thought the escalator just malfunctioned, but then so did the teleprompter.
I don't mind making this speech without a teleprompter because the teleprompter is not working. I feel very happy to be up here with you nevertheless, and that way you speak more from the heart. I can only say that whoever's operating this teleprompter is in big trouble.
Trump says the UN is just lucky that Melania is in great shape.
All I got from the United Nations was an escalator that on the way up stopped right in the middle. If the First Lady wasn't in great shape, she would have fallen. But she's in great shape. We're both in good shape. We both stood. And then a teleprompter that didn't work. These are the two things I got from the United Nations, a bad escalator and a bad teleprompter. Thank you very much. And by the way, it's working now. It just went on. Thank you. I think I should just do it the other way. It's easier.
Coincidence or sabotage? The UN tried to blame Trump. But on Sunday, the Times reported this, quote, to mark Trump's arrival, UN staff members have joked that they may turn off the escalators and elevators and simply tell him they ran out of money, so he has to walk up the stairs.
This is a lot bigger than I anticipated. Secret Service is getting involved. Trump drafting missives. The UN is now officially on notice. This is wild stuff, man. What's this? We got this from Bannon on Real America's Voice.
Gateway's always video. It's shocking. Another security breach. This is not the Secret Service problem, but another security breach right there. Of course, Gateway's always getting the buried lead. And the escalator, as soon as he steps on it, it stops. Come on, man. It's ridiculous. And as soon as I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, I think the reporting says the teleprompter worked for Lula and the others. President Trump gets up there. He says right when he gets up there, the teleprompter's not working. I got to read this, but I'll do it. I'll give it from the heart, which I'd rather have him just give it from the heart than re-prepare remarks. But it's not, listen, there are no coincidences. They're trying to mess with him. Afterwards, the Bolsonaro guys told me when Bolsonaro's there, because Brazil traditionally always goes first. They were supposed to have a car service pick him up and his security, and they never sent it. He had to hustle up from his hotel and just barely got there. Got there, in fact, a few minutes late. The UN thinks they're cute. They think they're cute. Hey, how about this? Why don't we pull all the money, not just from the Dog and Pony Show in New York. That's the main stage. I'm talking about from Geneva. Pull it all.
Yep.
Every penny of it. We don't need it. We don't want it. The CCP runs it. A bunch of incompetence from the second and third world, always being big shots. Don't care about the Security Council. Walk away from all of it and shut it down. If you're going to shut down a rural hospital, let's shut down Geneva and the United Nations first. How about that?
Yeah, I'm for that. Shut it down. Here is the press secretary with Jesse Waters.
All right, Karoline, it does appear to be sabotage with the escalator and the teleprompter. What is the White House going to do about that?
Well, Jesse, that's definitely what it appears to be to me. And that's why I put out a statement earlier. Well, there was some concerning reporting over the weekend from the London Times, as you pointed out, that UN globalist staffers were basically plotting to set up the president of the United States. And first it was the escalator, then it was the teleprompter, and then Katie Pavlich from Town Hall, who we offered a seat in the press pool to cover the president's historic speech today, noticed that the audio inside of the room was much lower and different for the president of the United States than the previous speaker. So when you put all of this together, it doesn't look like a coincidence to me. And I know that we have people, including the United States Secret Service, who are looking into this to try to get to the bottom of it. And if we find that these were UN staffers who were purposefully trying to trip up, literally trip up, the president and the first lady of the United States, well, there better be accountability for those people. And I will personally see to it, Jesse.
Good. All right, Carol.
Escalator Gate is in play. And if you got value from this report, tap subscribe. My final thought is next. So this isn't really about a broken escalator. It's about respect or the complete lack of it. The UN staffers literally joked about sabotaging Trump's visit, then acted shocked when their prank became international news. Whether it was a safety sensor or a deliberate act, the message sent to the world was clear. The United Nations has zero respect for the American president and their machinery, even though we pay for it, doesn't even work. Steve Bannon nailed it. The escalator stops exactly when Trump steps on it. The teleprompter doesn't work, but Lula's worked fine. They are messing with him. Jesse Waters went nuclear on Fox, calling for extreme measures. That's where we are. UN games pushing cable news hosts to the brink. So here's what matters. If UN staff deliberately sabotaged equipment, they committed an act of diplomatic warfare. Secret Service is now investigating. Congress should defund them. Here's my question. Should America pull all funding from the UN immediately? Yes or no? Sound off below and show your American pride. Grab some merch on your way out at shop.nextnewsnetwork.com.